the concern about security, that if they give these IPv6 addresses out, even into the trillions, they won't be able to control fast enough what's going on from them. Is that an argument, or is that a part of the paradigm?
Certainly an argument, but it's not a valid one because there are certain decisions that companies have to make. So Cisco has to make a decision. Do we put IPv6 in our routers or not? Does Microsoft, do we put it in our operating system or not? And it's there already, and it can be turned on by hackers without your even knowing about it if you're clueless about IPv6. So even though only one fifth of 1% of all the IPv6 traffic is there, I don't have a way of proving this, but I am sure that more than 1/5 of 1% of all the hack attacks on networks comes through IPv6, but people don't even notice them because it's like you're in two dimensions. You're in flatland, and an attack comes in from the third dimension. You don't really understand it. So IPv6 is something which it's not a matter of can you ignore it. You can ignore it all you want. You can use the ostrich strategy, but people who are smart can still use it to attack your network.
And so how do you respond to that? If it's supposed
to upgrade, we have to move to IPv6. We have to make a decision of a date where we stop routing IPv4 packets, just like we made a decision to stop using UHF television.
For standards, right?
Yeah, we have to. But there's a point at which we have to just stop. Like we have no horse and buggies on our highways. It used to be horses and buggies could go anywhere. Now they can't. Now they can go around Central Park in New York and pretty much, and in country roads and stuff. I grew up with horses. But there's a point at which you have to say, no, only the faster vehicles can go on the networks.
Will this make doing business on the internet faster?
Theoretically, you could work on an architecture which could increase your ability to have traffic go faster, but that's IPv6 isn't necessarily made. It allows you to have greater addressability, it allows you to keep the end-to-end principle alive rather than going through network address translation so that you can have your own numbers at the end. But just like your phone, like the fact that I go through and I can reach you directly rather than having to go through a PBX, a private brand,
right,
to reach you, is that faster? Well, yeah, because I don't have to stop at a secretary or a voice box or voice things, but it's not necessarily, it's more the architecture rather than just that it's faster. It's not itself broadband. That's a different thing.
Who in the United States would need to be the first one to go through this transition that would influence the rest of the players to play?
Microsoft at one period of time had most of the IPv6 traffic in the United States because they were using it a lot on their campus. It was the default in Windows XP. It was set up as a default in Windows XP. So you would see, do I have IPv6 and do you have it? Okay, let's use that. But so Microsoft has to be there. The DISA, Defense Information Systems Agency, has to make the transition. Google got huge blocks of IPv6 addresses, and so Google has to do it. Those, people who do cloud computing, Amazon, those guys have to make the transition to make it for the rest of us.
And what's the benefit to them? That's the part I still don't get. What's the benefit when they make that transition? What do they get?
Transition is inevitable. It is impossible to go and keep up with the growth of the Internet and keep the end-to-end architecture principle with IPv4 if you have a global network. So if something's inevitable, you might as well get there first and find new and novel uses of it.
I'm sure you have some in mind. Is that part of the work that you did at Inova Technology?
No, that's Inofone.
Inofone.
Focused on IPv6.
Talk about Inofone, would you?
Well, Inofone was the primary business of Inofone in the beginning was to do conferences about IPv6 and made its money through sponsorships. And then it moved into a phase of consulting for governments. So it did transition plans for the United States and for NATO and for companies, and also did best practices world reports. So we would see what was the best aspects of transition that people were doing and then go and do that. And then was working on software. The company, I took it public through reverse merger, and I had set up to do acquisitions, but I didn't count on the fact that there were so many people doing naked shorting, which is illegal for a bulletin board stock, and yet there's, I think, 3,000 complaints to the SEC, and not one of them investigated of naked shorting, where someone can just go without owning any of the stock, without having.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So basically, I lost on paper over $130 million from all of that short selling because I foolishly tried to defend against it for going on about 3 years. And if I'd known what I'd known now, in the shorts just take your stock down, but you know how much stock is there, you just let them do it, and then you just go in and buy the shares for almost nothing, and then you say, okay, give me the shares that you just suppose, with going long in a stock, you are buying and then selling. Going
right.
short, you are selling and then buying. And then it's like, okay, give me the shares. You supposedly sold these shares that you owned. I bought them, give them to me, deliver them to me. I didn't know that one simple thing. And if I'd known that one simple thing, I could have defended my wealth. But as it is, I learned that not to go public. That's what I learned. At least not go public with the current enforcement mechanisms of the SEC.
Indeed. And coupled with high-frequency trading and derivatives, I think it's a dangerous course. Talk a little bit about your work with the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society and explain what the Sea Shepherd does.
Sea Shepherd was started in 1977 by Captain Paul Watson, who was a co-founder of Greenpeace. And he thought that Greenpeace wasn't active enough, wasn't aggressive enough in solving certain problems. And Sea Shepherd is most well known for its work with whaling, which I'll get to in a second, but also works on trying to save the Galapagos baby seals and the seal hunt in Canada, tuna, which is probably going to go extinct next year, the bluefin tuna, and in general, looking at the degradation of the marine environment. The oceans cover over 70% of the Earth's surface, and we talk about canaries in a coal mine. Well, these marine species, many of which have collapsed, by 90 to 97% from their former numbers, these are harbingers. And if we keep on having marine species go extinct, there's a serious problem. And it goes like this. If you take the large predators out of the ocean, then the medium-sized predators will have population explosion, and they will go crazy and eat up all the small ocean life. And the small ocean life eats the algae. And algae will bloom out of control, and you'll end up on all the coasts of the world with a dead zone where algae is just basically exploded out of, there's nothing keeping it in check. So if you want to literally kill the oceans around where humans live, then, by all means, just get rid of the fish nilly-willy. And what Sea Shepherd is doing now for whaling, and whales, by the way, have an actually very important role in the ecosystem. Number one, when the whales crap, they actually take carbon out of the atmosphere, and it's there at the bottom of the ocean. And two, when a whale dies, the whale carcass actually feeds other life because it's so cold, and so it degrades very slowly, like in a refrigerator. It feeds other marine life for decades, so it creates an oasis of other sea life. It's kind of amazing how important whales are. Now, whaling is banned under the CITES, the CITES Treaty on Endangered Species, and it's banned by the International Whaling Convention, IWC. However, the Japanese have this trick that they play as if the whole world is incredibly stupid, and they say they're doing scientific research. So they have killed 45,000 whales since this ban, and saying that they're just doing it for science. And they have published only 4 papers that look even remotely like scientific papers, one of which makes the startling conclusion that whale sperm can't fertilize a cow egg. In other words, it's not real science. It's just fake. Japan is just scamming the world. And Australia is the only nation with the guts to be able to say, okay, this is nonsense, and took them to the World Court. Now, people in Australia and their own government, the WikiLeaks documents are filled with documents. I mean, it's extraordinary how much diplomatic power Japan has expended trying to get the United States to stop Sea Shepherd. By the way, Sea Shepherd has 21 staff people. Japan has 127 million people, and this is not some group in Japan. This is the Minister of Fisheries has empowered and funded a 1 billion yen a year subsidy to the Institute for Cetacean Research, which does zero research and just basically a whale kill, illegal whale. It's whale poaching. It's going into protected preserves and getting whales and killing them in a nature preserve. So what Sea Shepherd does